What's up, YouTube? It's Joe Ketchpalia sitting on the couch making some money investing in fractional real estate online as usual. Today we're going to look at Mogul's most recent launch. It's a Padsplit in Atlanta called the 3000. This was actually just launched yesterday and is already about 2/3 sold out. Or at least that's when they send this, the VIP launch email. I'm not actually sure if it's on their website already or not. It could be. They're only offering 156,000. That's the amount of the raise, and I think there's $60,000 left. I'm gonna try to do a quick due diligence video on this, see what we can figure out about it. Gonna say a lot of the same things I think that we've said in other videos, but this one's a little bit different. There's a couple pros and cons. If you've been passing these up like I have on the most recent ones, I'm not sure the answer is going to be different on this one or not. We'll have to get through it and see. So, let's see. What do I want to say about this? It is 7 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, and if you've watched many of my videos, I am a fan of the having fewer bathrooms or fewer bedrooms, right? 7, just because of the risk in the future of city government saying, okay, you can't do this anymore. You can't have so many people living in single family homes. Somewhere around 6 or 7 is where I feel like some cities will draw the line. That's happened in the past. There's been a lot of different, there's been cities, some of them come up with smaller numbers and some are bigger. But I always think of it as being a a good thing when it's less versus more. There's 3 en-suites, 3 of the rooms have en-suites. Those tend to have better rents and better retention. And it's 2,400 square feet, which is pretty spacious for 7 bedrooms in a pad split setting, right? I've mentioned a few times, I think I have a friend who does these, he's got 4 or 5 of these of his own, and he's typically looking for 2,000 square feet to put 8 bedrooms in. So to have 2,400 square feet and 7 bedrooms, it seems like there's either spacious bedrooms or bigger living area, and that it's not completely clear which it is, but it seems like the floor plan had an error on it. I'm actually not sure if it's corrected. Oh, they did update this, because this had said, so this is a corrected one, so that's good. But you don't see, it doesn't look like there's a ton of common area, so it makes me think that these are, although I don't really understand what's going on with this, this area here, but it is, it's, I guess they have to have relatively big bedrooms, and I think especially these 3 that all have their own bathroom, are good sized rooms, which again, I believe will lend to better pricing, longer stays. This is another one that they acquired off market. Last time I mentioned, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a good deal, right? Sometimes. Especially when you start to get a lot of off-market deals from the same source, a lot of times they've just identified you as the person who's going to pay the most for those properties. And I'm starting to get worried that's what's going on here. But let's see what we can see about this. There's something else I wanted to say here. Oh, they mentioned they're mounting TVs on each room. They're doing a renovation with attractive finishes, which hasn't been the case with all of the pad splits that we've seen. Sometimes they've been not great looking, or not higher end, or not there's very much just functional, livable. So there's a range, and that's going to be important when we look at the financial projections. But let's get some of the easy stuff out of the way. FEMA flood map looks real good to me, so we'll just close that out. The crime map, I think this is probably the best crime map we've seen in Atlanta. You will see there are 3 gunshots, but you have to zoom out pretty far to get to those, right? Like, this is our little subdivision, and when we're over here, there wasn't very many crimes, and this was in about a 6-week period. So one of the best crime maps we've seen in the Atlanta market. Pretty happy with that. Before I forget, please like and subscribe. In the description to this video, I have links set up to all the places where I'm currently investing in fractional real estate online. Do your own due diligence on those platforms and on any properties you see me talk about. Just because I like them or I don't like them, or I say, hey, I like that crime map, it's the best one I've seen. Anything like that, that doesn't mean that you should invest in it, right? You want to be doing your own independent research, figuring out, is this a deal for you? Not necessarily just, do I think it's a deal, right? And also in the description of this video, I have a link set up to the Discord where we have over 200 members now. Discussions every day about, Mogul properties, Lofty, ground floor, a whole bunch of different fractional real estate platforms. If you are invested in fractional real estate on a platform you don't see a link to, let me know, and I'll add a separate sub channel so that we can continue that. But yeah, please feel free to join. Okay, so back to this. Yeah, like I said, I like that crime map, but that doesn't, you want to make that decision on your own. You can always look at that neighborhood scout map as well. But I think this is why you don't see a lot of crime. Is it's pretty spread out, right? This is the home right here. A lot of woods nearby. A couple of things. Oh, so as I mentioned in the Discord, a couple people were sharing some different due diligence that they did. Brad was nice enough to share a link to the apartments.com listing for this property, and pointed out that, it has a walk score of 2 out of 100, meaning that it's very car dependent. 28 for transit. So this doesn't seem good to me for a pad split. Most of the time we're thinking, oh, these people are taking public transportation. Most of the members, that's what they're doing. Although you do see there's a bus stop here. And when I put the little walk meter, like the distance, and had it tell me how long it takes to walk, it said it's about 3 minutes. So it is very close to this bus stop. I don't know if they just, I'm not really sure why that got such a low score there. Other than, there's no place, as far as walkability, there, it doesn't look like there's any place as far as stores or places of employment that you could walk to. But I don't know why the transit came in so low. If just just a bus stop isn't enough or what. I haven't looked at a lot of these walk scores, so have to start checking these out more. It does look very quiet. I thought that's interesting. So that's one of the things too. If you find other sources of information about properties, please always share those links. If it's ones that we can reliably use over and over again, I'll include it in the tools section of the Discord. But yeah, I appreciate it whenever people share any of the independent research they do. So thanks a lot, Brad. What else do I want to say about this one? Oh, it also looks like there is plenty of parking. Even though this is only tandem parking here, so this really only counts as one. At the moment, you have this whole street, that you could just park along the street here. I think if this lot ever got developed, obviously that would change things. But if it did, there's plenty of land where you could add some additional parking as well. So I think the parking issue is fine if you do have members here that do have vehicles. So those are, parking, transit. Those are the two of the physical things that we're always looking for. We don't have any pictures other than, this one and the floor plan. Let's see. It's going to be delivered fully renovated. And I think they actually, I thought this one, because it says, I think this one had the, day one cash flow thing expected to, but maybe not. Maybe I was looking at another one. Maybe it's not this one. Because it doesn't look like it. This property comes furnished and make ready as a turnkey pad split that is ramping up occupancy. I don't know. I believe it's going to, maybe I saw it here. I believe it's going to be one where they have the seller listed on Padsplit first, but it doesn't actually say that, does it? Be delivered fully renovated. Okay. I thought I saw that somewhere. If somebody else has seen that, please, jump in the comments or in the Discord and mention where that is, that it's going to be listed on Padsplit already. Maybe I'm wrong about that though. Yeah, certainly could be. Let's look at the next thing, the valuation side of things, right? This is where I'm always worried, or I'm very often worried about the Mogul properties. It's starting to feel like we overpay often. Looking at this zip code, prices have dropped 8.6% in the last year. Not as bad as the last submarket we looked at, but still pretty big dip. Although Zillow thinks that over the next year, it's going to start going up and it'll go up 1.3%. This is actually the strongest prediction I've seen in a market from Zillow in any of them that we've looked at recently. I don't know if it's because as rates came down in the last couple of weeks, Zillow's adjusted this, or if this market is poised to do better. I'd have to go back and look at all those other markets again, and I haven't done that. It doesn't look like it's bottomed out here price-wise, so I thought that's kind of interesting. Pretty familiar shape of this map, although this past year is a sharper decline than we've seen in a lot of markets. Okay, let's see. Already looked at that. Looked at this. When we look at Zillow's estimates, okay, 231.9. This is just sold in December, right? The current seller selling it to us, bought it, they're renovating it, and are selling it to us. And so, okay, obviously Zillow doesn't know that the work's being done. So it was sold as a 5-bedroom, 3-bathroom. We're buying it as 7 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms. So they're adding a bathroom, doing a renovation. They talked about higher end finishes. Now we're buying it for, what are we buying it for? $320, and it sold for, so $90,000 delta, right? There's that much spread. They're not adding any square footage as far as I can tell. So what does that mean? That's a lot of renovation. So, one of the things I've talked about this quite a bit, like, it looks like there's a lot of profit being made by the buyer or the seller who bought it and is selling it to us. And that certainly could be true. It also could be that seller negotiated a great deal for this because it was in poor condition, right? And so, yes, they may be making some profit, but maybe a portion of that profit is coming from actually just the work they're doing, going out there and finding these deals, putting them together. But I mean, $90,000 on this price point does seem like a lot, right? That's why I'm a little nervous about it. Realtor has it at $230, so again, right around $90,000 more than that estimate. And the Redfin though, the estimated sale price, it goes up to $274 there, but they give us, they think it's really worth $237. So it's a little bit better. We're talking closer to $80,000 difference, and they are furnishing it and everything. So it's tough. It's tough to know because we're not getting a scope of work for the renovation. I'd really like it if Padsplit started, or if Mogul started to tell us, this is what it looked like when that buyer bought it. These are the things that are being done. It's not just the room conversions and the new bathroom. It's also flooring, carpet, flooring, paint, landscaping, whatever those things are, would be great to know. Because one of the things a lot of people have talked about is, hey, why aren't we just going out and looking for the properties that need to be bought and converted? Why are we buying these from somebody, especially when it looks like we are continually buying from a few sellers in some markets? Why not try to get that profit ourselves? Now, I think the obvious answer is, well, that's a whole another line of work that maybe Mogul doesn't want to be in. I think we do have one property that they're going through that whole process, and so maybe once that's done, they'll be able to make a decision. Okay, do we want to do more of that or not? But this is all stuff. The webinar coming up, I think next week. It'd be people should be asking these questions if it's stuff that you're concerned about. I know. I'm very curious. I've slowed down buying a lot of these. One, because it seems like their deal on average is getting worse. It seems like maybe we're overpaying more and more. I don't know that that's true, because I've had concerns with valuations for a while, but it looks like the projected yields are getting worse. And that's something I'm going to dig into next. But I also looked at their comps again, and they did the same thing that they've done that I've complained about several times. This is the property here. And so you can see, we've gone like all the way across the highway over here for one of the comps. Like, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me when you have these sort of, when you're having to reach so much to get comps. It always worries me, and and it makes sense, right? Because we have, it's part of the same issue. Now, again, we always, we have the appraisal contingencies in these contracts. I actually didn't pull up this contract, so you might want to do that. I've just been trying to get these out as quickly as possible. So sorry, I did skip that. I didn't look at the contract. If you're going to invest in this one, you should definitely do that. Just like you should, always dig into these things on your own. So let's see. But yeah, it seems like even with an appraisal contingency, you can get appraisers to tell you pretty much anything. And I think that they're just because they're using DSCR loans. I think that the appraisers understand these are income producing properties, and it seems like they're getting some credit for that on these. Otherwise, it's really hard to understand how they're working. And so that's perfectly fine as long as when we go to sell it, we get that same treatment. And that's just something I feel like we don't have a real guarantee of. And you just have to believe that Padsplit's going to continue to grow. It's going to be more normalized in a way that people will start paying for that yield, but not so much that it becomes saturated and the yields decrease and then people pay less. And I think that's kind of a weird balancing act. That we, to assume both those two things both happen, right? One, it becomes normalized, so sellers will pay for that yield, and that there's not so many pad splits entering the market that the yield gets depressed because average rents go down. I don't know if those are both safe assumptions. Now, over time, there could be more demand, so we may be more and more supply, but we also get more demand because it becomes a product that people are familiar with and they like to move into it. I'm just not a big fan of making investments where I have to be able to predict the future when the future doesn't look like the present, right? And so that's why I keep harping on the valuations, and I want a property that it makes sense to me what it's worth today just as a single family home, not as an income property, because that's what creates a margin of safety for us. As it's one of the reasons that I like investing in residential real estate, because it is both, you have both that owner user value, right? The person who's just going to buy it and be an owner occupant. And that creates sort of a backstop for our investment strategy, right? Like we have, it could be worth more to us as investors, but we know, okay, we can always sell to an owner occupant and get whatever the market bears for that, right? Where, when you invest in certain other types of real estate, you don't necessarily always have that advantage. Like, for example, if the demand for, if you own a hotel and travel is down and people aren't staying in your hotel, you can't just sell that as for some other use, right? You're not going to get an owner occupant to buy that. So anyway, that's a bit of an aside. Okay. So the only other thing, I don't even think I talked about the numbers, but they're saying 11.9% average yield, 12.1% IRR. The first month or the first year being 7.9% is their rental income projection. Again, lower than what we got used to early on. Still better than what we see on a lot of other platforms. And again, when we see these ones that they're buying with no in-place income, I just wonder, are they being overly conservative, or, and that's why these numbers came down, or are these just, really what we should expect? Is that the number that we're getting? As usual, I like to shut off the refinance and see that with that changes. Okay, 11.1 and 11. This has just become pretty normal, right? If you've been looking at these, same interest rate, and assuming that in the future, I turn amortizing on instead of turning the refinance on. Assuming that sometime in the next 5 years, we're going to be able to refinance at 5%. And again, I think that that's a relatively safe assumption, but you just never know. So I like to see what it looks like without that as well. I know. And so as far as their projections, right? This is one of the first times where it seems like they're being more aggressive than what it looks like, than what I would if I was just looking at the tools I have at my disposal. So this is their rental income number, 50,400. When I play with the calculator on, and so that rental income number is, when we look at Padsplit's calculator, I believe what it should be, and what matches up with most of their projections, is this effective gross income number minus platform fees. And so in this instance, that would get us to about 48,000, right? So if we had 55,924 minus 8,286, somewhere around 48,000. Or 47 plus. Well, why don't we just use the calculator? Because it's late and maybe my brain's not doing math right. So 55,924 minus, where is it? 8286. Yeah, 47,600. And so their projection is 50,400. This is the first time that I haven't had that matchup, at least, within $1,000 margin of error. So I'm not sure what's happening here. I don't know if they're assuming, one, there is a way to go in and use a different Padsplit tool where you can describe each bedroom. All I did is say, okay, we have 3 bedrooms with en-suites and 4 that share a bathroom. You can also go in on a more granular basis and say, okay, this room is what they call a cozy room. It's small, or this is a big room. They have these different ways to define them. And then maybe spitting out something that's a little bit better. But this is the first, like I said, this is the first time that it seems like they're projecting, or more than just what I'm getting with my sort of, generic gross tool there. So I'm not sure why that is. I don't know if it's because they're doing higher end finishes, putting TVs in every room, because they think maybe this particular property is just nicer. It worries me a little bit, right, that they're doing it, that it's just because, we're already been shrinking this yield and we don't want to get too low. That's one of the things. I talked about this early in my career. I worked in the acquisitions department for a couple different REITs. And one of the things, you always had this need to go out and buy properties. And so that's one of the reasons that I don't invest in REITs, is because when you invest in a REIT, you're getting just a piece of every single deal that they're doing, basically. And so, during times when we couldn't really find good deals, you still had pressure to buy and close on deals because there was capital. Here, it's not the same thing. They don't have capital just sitting there, but clearly there's a lot of demand for Mogul's properties. I mean, they had 3 sellouts just this week, 3 properties sell out just this week. This one, they're just selling out extremely quickly with all that demand. And the fact that they make money on every one of these, I'm sure they're seeing this pressure to, okay, let's just keep finding more properties. I think any human is going to feel those incentives, and the maybe stretch on some assumptions to make a deal work that doesn't necessarily make as much sense. So I think that could be happening. The only way we'd really know is if we got a lot more detail on these properties, right? I love the level of financial detail so we can see exactly what all their assumptions are. But it'd be great to understand a little bit more about, okay, well, why are they projecting more than what the Padsplit tool is saying? Are they, how are they coming up with this top line revenue? All those, because early on it was easy. You didn't have to do that because they just said, hey, it's been operating like this for a year. we're just, we're projecting a number that's slightly below how it's been operating, which I think was, very conservative. I think they were, all those early deals were sort of no-brainers for me. Here, they're creating a projection. We're just having to trust that projection. As I've mentioned many times, I think these guys really know what they're doing. And so, I've come to trust them on a lot of the stuff. If they say something, I'll just take their word for it. I do always want to verify things when I can, which is why I do my own due diligence, why I'm digging into, Padsplit's projections, why I'm looking at third-party valuations for things. I don't ever want to be in a spot where I just blindly take their word for it. And I worry that a lot of the people that are just jumping in and buying these deals instantly, that's what's happening. And I think that's what we've seen other sites that grew very quickly. It happened because you have all this demand and you want to give them deals. It becomes apparent over time, I think, that there's people that are just willing to invest in just about anything if they like the pictures and this number is, something that they're okay with. And so I don't think that's happening yet. Like, I still think Mogul is going out and finding deals that are better than the average deal that we see on just about any other site at the moment. But it is, at the same time, I'm concerned that that's the direction that we're moving. Every single recent pad split has had a lower projected yield than all the early pad splits that I bought. And I just don't know. And another thing too is maybe they're operating more pad splits and realize, okay, yes, this was the top line revenue, but we actually are, receiving less on the bottom line than we were before, or than what we expected. So maybe part of it is from the actual performance of the ones that they own. It doesn't seem to be the case because I've gotten really good yield so far on most of the pad splits, especially in this market. And I own a few now, or several in the Atlanta market. So anyway, because of that, I'm not, I'm going to pass on this one as well. If you're going to buy this one, I'm curious. Let me know, what's got you excited about it. Do you, is it one of the things is, like I said, that 8% yield or 7.9% is still better than the yield that you're getting on almost everything you see on Arrived, almost everything on Arc 7, anything on Real Bricks, almost anything that you see on, or I think better than anything that you see on Collab, so it's, you see some higher yields on Lofty, although a lot of times those are temporary or they're, created by some sort of, financial engineering, like something that's really structured in a way that it's extremely high risk for that yield. But so I think when you look at it, it's still, they're still getting better than average deals. And if I were forced to deploy, if I didn't have other places to put my capital right now, like in real world deals on my market, I might be a lot more interested in, buying up all these. But the other thing is too, I now own, I think, 16 properties with them. I know their secondary market's going to open up. I want to see how that goes. So I've really just slowed down in general. If I didn't own any Atlanta area pad splits with Mogul, I would probably buy this one. Even with everything that I said, the biggest risk that I see is the valuation. Worried that we're starting a little underwater and maybe it'll be a very long time before we can sell for a profit. But as long as they perform on the projected yields, I don't really care because it's a good yield over a long period, and if they're able to keep those up, I'd be perfectly happy with it. Anyway, that's really all I have to say about this one. I know this video, you're probably getting tired of hearing me say basically the same thing about several of these. Due diligence is boring, right? It's one of the challenges in this industry is that, you want to stay curious. You want to stay to where you're always asking the questions, trying to understand what's going on, looking at every single thing, checking the flood map every time, checking the crime map every time, digging into the numbers. Like, it is the most boring part of the industry, but because I just want to dig into every single one, I'm going to spend the time on it anyway. I figure I'm going to keep sharing this. I do want to go back and do some other videos on real estate investing topics in general. So if you have ideas on topics you'd want me to discuss, please put that in the comments, because I don't want to get to where this is only Mogul property due diligence videos. As they pump out more and more, I think I'm going to have to get to a point where I start skipping, where I only do some of them or do the more interesting ones, or maybe only do, real short, just talking about what makes this one a little bit different. But at the moment, I think it's important that we just, really dig through each one step by step. And that's what I'm trying to do, right? Is just share my general real estate investing experience. And this is what it is. I mean, looking at deals all day, every day, trying to figure out where's the risk, what are we missing. But because Mogul's sort of handling a lot of that for us, there's only a couple of things that we need to check each time. It's at least for me, right? And obviously, I've talked about this before. If you want to ask more questions, dig more into it, you certainly should, right? Don't, just because I'm at a point where I take their word for a lot of different things, doesn't mean that you need to be there. And I think the more that we ask questions and challenge Mogul as a company and as a provider of investments for us, the better we'll all, it'll be for all of us. Anyway, that's it for me for today. Until next time, I'm just going to keep making mistakes so that you don't have to.